Hello everyone, welcome to this session of my NPTEL course Appreciating Linguistics, and we are talking about language typology and cross-linguistic studies in the world's languages. So, when we think about language universals, we must account for the questions which are related to typological cross-linguistic similarities, right. So, now let us summarize what we have discussed so far. So, what are the two central questions in linguistics which were raised? First, the cross-linguistic distribution of structural properties across languages and what are the reasons. So, two things we discussed: what is the distribution of the cross-linguistic structural properties, and once we found out of at least a few linguistic phenomena which are distributed across languages, then we are trying to find out what is the reason. So, if you can recall, we were talking about subject, object, verb, we are talking about noun phrase and adposition, possessor and possessum relation. All these distributions should be the reason of something, and this reason is based on 4, or I think now it is 5. So, 5 different possible explanations that we have discussed so far, and this leads to research in language universals and language typology. Okay. So, now let us look at the summarized version of what we have discussed so far. So, what are the two cross-linguistic, or what are the two questions that most of the typologists they try to find an answer? The first question: how are the linguistic phenomena distributed, or what is the, or if I can put it in a simpler form, what is the cross-linguistic distribution of structural properties across languages? That is the first question. Second question: what are the reasons of these cross-linguistic distributions or the cross-linguistic similarities? So, these are the two focus questions. So, these are the two primary questions that typologists they ask, and what are the possible explanations that they give. So, when you raise a question, you need to give us a possible or potential answer, and the possible answer is that what are the 5 kinds of explanations. First, languages of the world, they have, first hypothesis or the first possible explanation, they have shared inheritance. Second, they have shared language contact. Third, they have shared communication environment. Fourth, they belong to same language types, and fifth, they do host certain language universals. So, if you look at the 5 kinds of explanations I have given, types and universals, they are highlighted. And why have we highlighted? These types or these linguistic types would result or would give rise to certain linguistic universals. So, the next set of my discussions or the next set of my sessions would talk about the language universals and what are the possible let us say sampling, or what are the possible strategy, or no, the better word would be what are the possible design of language universals that we have in world's languages. So, to sum it up, if I ask you the question, what is language typology? What did you understand from here? All these cross-linguistic generalizations that we are talking about, similarities that we are talking about, explanations that talking about. So, what is the crux of the story? After you finish this course, if I ask you the question, what is linguistic typology? Your answer should be, linguistic typology is the study of typologically and universally shared features of language. So, that is the definition that you need to remember before thinking about anything else as far as language typology is concerned. So, that is why when I framed the syllabus or the course content, I said appreciating linguistics or typological approach. So, when you approach linguistics as an academic discipline and you are trying to appreciate, you must understand the linguistic universals, and why world's languages, which look to be very different from each other on the surface, actually have a lot of similarities that would raise some questions in the linguist's mind, and they have tried to explain it. So, to cut it short or to put it in a nutshell, Language typology is the study of typologically and universally shared features of language. So, with this information I would move to the language universals. So, what did I say? What is a language universal? Phenomena or certain linguistic phenomena which are available across languages, right. So, now let us look at the universals from the speech sound inventories of human language. To begin with, we will start with phonetics, then we will move to the other phenomena. So, I will talk about two sets of sentences here, one statement or one set of statements that is existential as given in 12a, and the other one is distributional. So, what is the existential statement? The existential statement is the existence of certain things. So, what is it? Some languages have oral stops like t, and statement B, some languages have alveolar nasals, that is n. So, t and n, some languages have it. These statements are known as existential statements. And once we got to know that things like this exist, or t, which is an oral stop, that is there in some languages. Nasals are also there, alveolar nasals are also there in certain languages. Now, our next claim is related to the distributional statement. So, we got to know something exists. If something exists in one language, what is the distribution? The distribution is that all languages have oral stops and all languages have alveolar nasals. So, the first two statements are existential, the next two statements are distributional. So, if you find out all and some, then the distributional value of oral stop and alveolar nasal is primarily it's available in all the languages. So, that's the first phonetic universal that I am talking about. Then the next one is, let's talk about some other existential and let us say universal statements. So, what does it say when I say some languages have oral stop and some languages have alveolar nasal? Then the statement would be some languages have X, that would be existential, and the universal statement would be divided into two. One is unrestricted, the other one is implicational. So, here I think I have to explain a few things. Okay. So, in the previous slide we saw the discussion about oral stop and alveolar nasal. To put it in a generic statement, the existential statement would be some languages have X. X could be anything. Okay. X could be bilabial stop, X could be oral stop, X could be, let us say alveolar nasal, X could be anything else, any other phonetic, or X could be a liquid or glide or anything. So, these are the things. X can replace anything that is being studied in linguistics. With the help of this existential statements, we can draw universal statements, and universal statements are primarily the distribution of it. This particular the existence of X, what is the distribution pattern? That is what we need to study. So, when you look at the distributional pattern, you would have unrestricted and then you have implicational. Okay. So, implicational, unrestricted means all languages have X. Implicational means all languages that have Y also have X. So, the distribution of X is implied to the distribution of Y. So, remember this is going to be the generic statement. Unrestricted will have all goes to X, but in case of implicational, all goes to Y and it goes to X. All languages that have Y will also have X. So, that will be the implicational universal. Okay. So, now let us put it in the framework of personal pronouns that we were discussing a while ago. So, how would we put the personal pronoun here? The personal pronoun would be, so the universal, the unrestricted universal would be all languages have personal pronouns. That means like the distribution is all. You pick and choose any language, you are going to find out a universal. And what is the implicational universal here? The implicational universal, let us read it 14a and 14b. The implicational universal, most languages that have SOV also have possessor and possessum, noun phrase and adposition order. I would ask you to go back to the data that we had for Hindi, Japanese and Turkish. To understand this, to understand the implicational universals, please go back to the Hindi, Japanese and Turkish data. So, what does this data set say us? The data says most languages that have SOV order also have possessor and possessum plus noun phrase and adposition. So, that is an implicational universal. What is the second implicational universal? Most languages that have verb initial order will also have possessor, possessum and adposition and noun phrase. So, most of the languages which have verb initial, they would also have possessor, possessum plus adposition, noun phrase. The same data set, please go back, Hindi, Japanese and Turkish. And if you put 14, like the 14a and b examples that I have given here, the unrestricted universal would be most language order heads and dependents uniformly. So, if there is a head and there is a dependent, they are distributed in a uniform fashion. So, that is what we understood so far about unrestricted and implicational universals. All unrestricted universal means all languages will have it. Implicational universal means most languages which have X, they will have Y, right. So, that kind of, so there is an implication of Y on X, then only you call it implicational universals. Okay. So, now this is just a representation of what we have discussed so far. So, what is the predictive force? How would you draw such kind of relation as far as universals are concerned? So, the relation here is, let us say unrestricted universals and we have a factor for this and the term is X, type 1 is plus, type 2 is minus. That means, if a certain phenomenon is considered to be unrestricted, type 1 has these features, type 2 does not have these features. So, either plus or minus, that is how we are going to represent it mathematically, right. And how would the implicational universal work? Implicational universal will have many permutations and combinations, which is why many types will emerge. In case of unrestricted, you do not have many types, it is either 1 or 0. When you say 1 in a binary fashion, when you say 1 it goes to plus, when you say 0 it goes to minus. But implicational universal is more flexible, it will result in multiple types. So, let us say Y and X, if you remember, if a language has Y, it will also have X. That is what implicational universals talk about. So, type 1 no Y, no X. So, there is implicational universal would give you the first type. Since there is no Y, there is no X. Type 2, if there is Y, then there is X plus plus, type 2. Third, there is no Y but X, that is also possible, but there would be Y but no X, that is not going to be possible, because in the implicational universal, X cannot be 0 or X cannot be negative, Y can be negative. Languages might have the feature X, they might not have feature Y, but the languages, going by the definition of implicational universals, languages which do not have feature X, they will have feature Y, that is wrong. So, the fourth type is ruled out. So, what are the three possible types of implicational universal pattern? Type 1 no X, no Y, type 2 plus Y plus X, type 3 minus Y plus X, and type 4 plus Y minus X, which is ruled out. Okay. That is how we have got to understand the 4 different types. So, let me summarize. So, what do you understand from here? So, languages which have both characteristics or have neither of the characteristics, both characteristics type 1, neither of the characteristics type 2, and both are predicted to occur. So, some languages might fall in the type 1 category, some might fall in the type 2 category. However, when languages that have only one of the 2 features, only one type is possible, that is type 3. The 4th type, the presence of y is said to imply the presence of x. That means, y cannot occur without x. That is the reason why the 4th type is ruled out, right. So, these are the implicational universals that we have discussed so far, right. And to know more about it, as I always suggest, please check the book, and you are going to know more about these universals from the data that have been discussed over there. Okay. Okay. So, since we realize there are unrestricted universals where they are available in all the languages. So, type 1 is always plus, type 2 is always minus. So, type 2 does not exist, and why type 2 does not exist as far as unrestricted universals are concerned? That means, if it is unrestricted, it is available in all the languages, and if you write it as minus, so then obviously that kind of a situation does not arise at all. However, in case of implicational universals, we have 3 types. So, y where no y, no x, then it is okay. There is y, there is x, that is also okay. No y, but there is x, that is also okay. But the 4th type where y is there, but there is no x, then that is ruled out. That means, the presence of y implies the presence of x. So, that means, if there is no x, you cannot expect y over there. So, the 4th one is ruled out. So, with this information, let us move to the relationship between the implicans and implicatum. So, when I say implicans and implicatum, I am mainly talk about what are the paradigmatic relation, what are the syntagmatic relation, and what is not what are. So, the 3 types or three different domains of relation would be at paradigmatic level, syntagmatic level, and reflexive level. Okay. So, at paradigmatic level, it would be known as paradigmatic universal. So, what does paradigmatic universal says? It says, let us read it and then you think about it and come up with examples for me. In all languages in which the inflected verb means the verb has certain inflection or markers, precedes the subject in yes no question, it does so in WH questions as well. I will give you an example in English and you let me know whether that holds true for this or not. So, think about a yes no question in English. Let us say, did you eat? So, in this case, when you say did you eat, the inflected verb, or let us not talk about did, we will have had you given food. Okay. So, had you given food, what is the inflected verb here? Given. And what is the subject here? Is you. And what sort of a question is that? This is a yes no question. So, what does the paradigmatic universal say? It says, in all languages in which the inflected verb precedes the subject. Okay. So, when you say when you say have you eaten, in this case it will also do the same in WH questions. So, when you say what have you eaten means, it will, when you add a WH, it will also be what have you eaten. So, in the WH question, if the first the subject comes, then the verb, something similar happens in the, if it happens in the yes no question, it is also going to happen in the WH question. So, think about Hindi, tumne khana khaya, tumne khana khaya kya. So, let's not talk about kya for the moment. So, khana and khaya. So, khaya has an inflection and the subject is here tumne. And if you add a WH word here, so that was an yes no question. With the addition of a WH word, tumne kya khaya. So, the position of tumne and the position of khana, the position of khaya, they remain almost same in both the cases. Okay? So, that would be the paradigmatic universal. What is the syntagmatic universal? The syntagmatic universal would be in all languages in which the inflected verb precedes the subject in the WH question, the WH word is normally initial. So, there is a language where the inflected verb precedes the WH question. So, in such a case the WH word is normally considered to be initial. So, these are primarily Greenbergian universals. So, the reference given here Greenberg 1966. And what is a reflexive universal? A reflexive universal will be in all languages in which yes no questions are differentiated from declaratives by an intonation pattern, the position of this pattern is reckoned from the end of sentence rather than from the beginning. So, I will give you a Hindi example. When you say khana khaya, so when you say khana khaya, the intonation on khaya gives you an idea whether this is a question or a declarative sentence, right. So, considering this is what like it is not khana that decides the fate of the statement, rather the intonation on khaya decides the fate of the sentence. So, that is what we would call as reflexive universals. So, what is how does it read? Again Greenberg 1966. In all languages which have yes no questions, they are differentiated from the declaratives by an intonation pattern. In such cases what happens? The position of the pattern is reckoned from the end of the sentence, not from the beginning. So, that is the reflexive universal. So, these are the three types of implicational universals that we have in linguistic typology literature, right. So, there are more into it. My suggestion for you would be please go back to the book and find out how well you can understand these things. There are a lot of data given over there, there are examples, and please find out how the pragmatic implication works, how the syntagmatic implication works, and how the reflexive implication or reflexive universal works. So, to wind it up, what I will say, if I have to put it in a systematic manner, or if I have to put it in a typological summarizing manner, then I would say the implicational universal differ on in the relationship between their terms at the paradigmatic level, syntagmatic level, and reflexive level. And when at the paradigmatic implication or the paradigmatic level, the generalized statement is something like this. Let's look at the generic statement given over here. In all languages, if there is y, there is also x, where y and x are different constructions. So, that is the paradigmatic relation or the paradigmatic implication. What is the syntagmatic implication? In all languages, if there is y, there is also x, where y and x are the parts of the same construction. So, in case of paradigmatic, the constructions are different. In case of syntagmatic, the constructions are same. And in case of reflexive, in all languages, if there is y, there is also x, where y and x are features of the same constituent within the construction. So, now let us try to visualize how the paradigmatic implication, syntagmatic implication, and reflexive implication works. Let me summarize it. Paradigmatic implication: in all languages, if there is y and there is x, then both y and x are in different constructions. At the syntagmatic level, there is y, there is x, both y and x are in the same construction. And the reflexive domain or the reflexive implication: in all languages, if there is y and there is x, then both y and x are the features of the same constituent within a construction. And what kind of relation does it have in terms of implicant and implicatum? So, all languages where there is y, there is also x, so that is single implicant. And if there is complex implicants, then it will be in all languages where there is y, there is also an X. So, the first one is an unrestricted universal, and then the second one is an implicational universal. So, in this set of discussion, I primarily focused on two main sorts or two main types of linguistic universals which are available in linguistic typology literature. One is the first one is universals, and when you are talking about universals, the first one is unrestricted, the second one is implicational. When you say unrestricted, this particular phenomenon is available in all languages, and if it is implicational, then there is this x y relation. If there is a y, there must be x. Okay? Without x, y cannot occur. So, that is the implicational relation. And in terms of implicational universals, you can study it at a paradigmatic level, syntagmatic level and reflexive level. In the paradigmatic level, both y and x, they belong to two different constructions. At the syntactic level, they belong to the same construction, and at the reflexive level, they are part of the same construction as constituents. So, that is what Greenberg has to say, and followed by many other typologists as far as linguistic universals are concerned. My suggestion for you would be refer to the slides. There are a couple of more slides which I did not really read or I did not really discuss in detail. Please go back to the book that I have suggested, Moravcik's book Introducing Language Typology, published by Cambridge University Press, and find out these things, both these restricted and implicational ones, in more detail in the second chapter, I think. So, it is about typology and universal. So, that will give you a better idea to understand universals. So, and what do you think, if you know many languages, let us say you are a polyglot, you actually speak multiple languages, then do you think there are certain features which are absolute universals discussed in the book are available in your language or not? They must be, otherwise it should not be considered as unrestricted. And how the implicational universals work in the languages that you know. So, that is something for you to ponder over and to think about, which will help you to understand the universals, basically the language universals, in a better manner. Thank you. If there is time, I am going to talk about a little more about it. Otherwise, I would primarily ask you to find out more about universals and then let me know in one of the sessions. Thank you.